July 23rd, 1983. Saturday afternoon, 41,000 feet altitude, over Canadian skies, cruising speed. Air Canada Flight 143, Boeing 767-200, Montreal to Edmonton, 69 passengers, crew, routine flight. Then alarms started ringing in the cockpit. Fuel pressure warning, left engine, right engine, both. Captain Bob Pearson looked at the control panel. He couldn't believe it. Fuel gauge reading near zero, 41,000 feet altitude, over rural Canada. They were running out of fuel. First Officer Maurice Quintal. How is this possible? We just left Montreal. But the numbers didn't lie. The engines were about to quit. And they did. First the left engine. Silent. Stopped. Seconds later, the right engine. It stopped too. Complete silence. Boeing 767, 132 tons, 69 souls on board. No engines, no power, no hydraulics, only gliding. Captain Pearson tried the controls. They responded, but heavy. Announcement to passengers. We're experiencing a minor technical issue. We'll be landing at a nearby airport. But the truth was much more serious. They were trying to fly a 132-ton passenger jet without engines, like a glider. Nearest airport, Winnipeg, 120 kilometers away. They did the math, altitude, speed, glide ratio. They wouldn't make it to Winnipeg. Alternative, Gimli, an old military airfield. Maybe they could reach there, maybe. But Captain Pearson didn't know something. Gimli Airfield was no longer in use. It had been decommissioned. And that day, something was happening there. A drag racing event. On the runway, cars, families, campers. Bob Pearson was about to try landing a 132-ton Boeing 767 without engines on a runway full of people. This is the Gimli glider story, one of the most incredible miracles in aviation history. 69 people, 0 engines, 1 runway, and 1 pilot. They all survived. July 23rd, 1983, Montreal, Air Canada, Flight 143 preparing for takeoff. Boeing 767-200, new model, entered service in 1982. Twin-engine wide-body, modern, technological, digital fuel gauges, computerized systems. Crew, Captain, Bob Pearson, 48 years old, 15,000 plus flight hours, experienced pilot. But one more detail, flies gliders as a hobby, glider pilot, experienced in unpowered flight. This detail will be crucial. First Officer, Maurice Quintal, experienced, calm. Passengers, 69 people, families, business travel, routine flight. Montreal to Ottawa to Edmonton route. Flight plan, stop in Ottawa. Then Edmonton, total 2,800 kilometers. About 3 to 4 hours flight. Fuel calculation, Boeing 767 fuel requirement, 22,300 pounds, about 10,100 kilograms. But there was a problem here. 1983 Canada, metric system conversion period. Fuel measured in liters, no longer gallons. Ground crew not used to it. Confusion. And a mistake would be made. A fatal mistake. Or maybe a miraculous mistake. 1983, Canada converting to metric system. Distance, kilometers, weight, kilograms, volume, liters. But aviation still using imperial, pounds, gallons, feet. Boeing 767's fuel system, new technology, FQIS, fuel quantity indicator system, digital display, automatic calculation. But on this aircraft, FQIS was broken. Manual calculation required, by hand. Ground crew's job, calculate fuel amount, load correct quantity, required for flight. 22,300 pounds of fuel. But how is this calculated in metric system? Conversion factor. 1 litre of fuel equals how many kilograms? Jet. A1 fuel density. 0.803 kilograms per litre. But ground crew used wrong factor. The error required 22,300 pounds, about 10,100 kilograms. Loaded 22,300 kilograms worth of fuel measured in pounds. But this was only about 4,917 gallons, 18,600 litres. Actually needed 9,800 gallons, 37,000 litres. Only half the fuel was loaded onto the aircraft. Ground crew made error. Flight crew didn't check. Trusted FQIS, which was broken. Aircraft ready for takeoff. Need 22,300 pounds of fuel, but tank only has half. Nobody noticed. Flight 143 departed Montreal. July 23, 1983. Afternoon. Flight 143 departed Montreal. Landed in Ottawa. Picked up passengers. Then headed toward Edmonton. Cruising altitude, 41,000 feet. Everything seemed normal. Then alarms started ringing. In cockpit, beep, 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 fuel pressure warning, left engine. Bob Pearson looked at control panel. Fuel gauge, very low. This is impossible. We just left Montreal. Maurice Quintal. Maybe the gauge is faulty. FQIS was already broken. Maybe this was also gauge error, but it wasn't. A few minutes later, left engine quit. Complete silence. Left side. Passengers noticed. Engine sound stopped. Immediately after, right engine also quit. Both engines offline. 41,000 feet altitude, over rural Canada. Boeing 767 was now a glider. Electricity cut. Cockpit plunged into darkness. Instruments went off. Hydraulic system collapsed. Controls froze. Only power source, batteries, but they last 30 minutes. Bob Pearson and Maurice Quintal sat in darkness. 132 tons, 69 passengers, no engines, only gliding. But how long can gliding last? Math, glide ratio. For Boeing 767, approximately 12:1, meaning travel 12 miles forward while losing 1 mile altitude. 41,000 feet equals about 7.7 miles altitude. 7.7 times 12 equals about 92 miles, 148 kilometers distance. Nearest major airport, Winnipeg International Airport. Distance, about 120 kilometers. Math done, they can't reach Winnipeg. Alternative, Gimli, former Royal Canadian Air Force Base. Distance, about 80 kilometers. Maybe they can reach there. But there's a problem. Gimli Airfield was closed in 1971, no longer in military use. And that day, something was happening there. But Bob Pearson doesn't know this. Bob Pearson, 48 years old, Air Canada captain, 15,000 plus flight hours. But one more characteristic. Hobby, flying gliders, glider pilot, expert in unpowered flight, every weekend flying small gliders. For fun. How to fly without engines. Bob knows, using air currents, managing altitude, calculating landing. And now, this knowledge would save their lives. Boeing 767 would become the largest aircraft ever to fly unpowered. Bob Pearson sat in cockpit, calm, turned to Maurice Quintal. Trying manual control. No hydraulics, but controls still mechanically connected. Bob pulled control yoke. Heavy. Very heavy, but responding. Somewhat. They can control the aircraft. Emergency procedures. 1. Ram air turbine, RAT, deployed. RAT, small propeller that extends from aircraft belly, generates power from airflow, provides minimal electricity, Powers some instruments, but not enough. 2. Announcement to passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor technical problem. We'll be making an emergency landing. Please remain calm. Didn't tell the truth. Didn't want panic. 3. Route plotted to Gimli. No GPS, 1983. Only manual navigation. Map, compass, visual. Started gliding toward Gimli, but altitude dropping rapidly. 41,000 feet to 35,000 to 30,000. Bob Pearson knew if they descend too fast, won't reach Gimli. But if too slow, speed drops. Lose control. Balance needed. And Bob knew a glider technique. Forward slip, banking aircraft sideways, using rudder plus aileron, increases air resistance, allows rapid descent, but controlled, used in gliders, to lose excess altitude. Bob Pearson executed forward slip on Boeing 767. Aircraft banked sideways, passengers frightened. But it worked. Altitude loss accelerated, in controlled manner. Approaching Gimli. But there's a problem. At Gimli Airfield that day, something was happening. Gimli Industrial Park Airport, Manitoba, Canada, former Royal Canadian Air Force Base, closed in 1971. No longer in military use, but not completely abandoned. Runway still there. Runway 32L and 32R. One runway, 32L, still in use, for small aircraft. Other runway, 32R, closed, but asphalt still there. And July 23, 1983, Saturday, an event at Gimli, Winnipeg Sports Car Club Family Day, drag racing competition, race cars, families, children, campers. On runway 32R, cars lined up, ready to race, tents, barbecue, picnic, hundreds of people, and nobody knows a Boeing 767 is approaching. Bob Pearson approaching Gimli. RAT providing some instruments, but limited. Radio partially working, but not fully. No Gimli Tower, airport closed. No traffic control. Bob finding runway location from map. Visual navigation. Altitude, 10,000 feet. Decreasing. Speed, 250 knots. Controlled. But doesn't know there are people on runway. Drag racers preparing for race. Someone looking at sky. Is that a plane coming? Boeing 767. Silent. Engines not running. Descending. Rapidly. Toward the runway. People realized. Plane landing. Run. Panic. Cars moving. People running. Children in mother's arms. Campers packing tents. Boeing 767, 100 tons, approaching. Bob Pearson saw people on runway. What's going on there? Maurice Quintal. People. There are people on the runway. Too late. Too close to maneuver. They have to land. Now. Dead stick landing. Aviation term, landing with engines off. Extremely dangerous. Bob Pearson never did this on Boeing 767, but did it hundreds of times on gliders. Now same principles, just 100 times bigger. Approaching runway 32R, people fleeing, cars exiting runway, but still some vehicles couldn't escape completely. Bob Pearson. Maurice, get ready. Altitude, 1,000 feet to 500 to 200. Speed, 180 knots. Too fast. Normal landing speed, 140 knots. But no engines, no thrust. Can't reduce speed. Forward slip technique again. Banked aircraft sideways. Increased air resistance. Speed dropped. 160 knots to 150. Runway approach. Final 100 feet. Touchdown. Main landing gear contacted runway. Thump. Passengers jolted, but safe. Then problems started. Nose landing gear didn't deploy. No hydraulic system. No manual lock. Front wheels didn't lock. Aircraft moving forward. Still has speed. Weight shifting forward. Nose hit the runway. Scream! Metal and asphalt friction, sparks flying, smoke rising, passengers screaming, aircraft sliding on nose, forward. Main tires burst. Too much friction. Boeing 767 sliding on runway. 500 meters, 400 meters, 300 meters, slowing down. 200 meters, 100 meters, stopped. Complete silence. Aircraft stopped. Middle of Gimli runway. Nose down. In cockpit, Bob Pearson and Maurice Quintal sitting, breathing. We made it. In back, passengers in shock. Silence. Then, did we land? Are we alive? Yes. They're all alive. Bob Pearson opened intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've landed at Gimli. Emergency evacuation beginning. Please remain calm and follow instructions. Emergency exits opened. Emergency slides inflated. But problem. Aircraft nose down. Tilted. Front exits too high. Slides too steep. Passengers started sliding. Fast. Some got friction burns from slides, but surviving. 69 passengers, one by one evacuated. Families, children, elderly, all got out. Drag races helped. People on runway ran over. Helped passengers. Are you okay? Anyone injured? Smoke in cabin. Small fire started from sparks, but fire extinguishers on aircraft. Crew extinguished it. Gimli Fire Department arrived. Within minutes, they were there. Started extinguishing aircraft. Made it safe. Final count, 69 passengers. All alive. Crew, all alive. Death count, 0. Serious injuries, 0. Only minor injuries. Friction burns from evacuation slides. Bruises. Nobody died. A 132-ton aircraft. No engines. Glided from 41,000 feet. Landed on runway full of people. Nose gear collapsed. Slid on runway. And nobody died. Miracle. Boeing 767 sitting on Gimli runway. Nose down. Media arrived. Photos taken. Iconic images. Boeing 767, nose touching runway at Gimli. Question: how did this happen? Air Canada launched investigation. Transport Canada, Aviation Authority, conducted review. Findings: 1. Fuel calculation error. Ground crew made error in metric imperial conversion. Required: 22,300 pounds. Loaded: 22,300 value, but wrong unit. Only half fuel loaded. 2. FQIS, Fuel Quantity Indicator System. Malfunction. Digital fuel gauge broken. Manual calculation required. But nobody calculated correctly. 3. Flight crew verification, insufficient. Bob Pearson and Maurice Quintal approved fuel quantity, but trusted manual calculation because FQIS broken. Error not noticed. 4. Metric transition confusion. 1983 Canada. Metric system transition period. Ground crew not familiar with new system. Training insufficient. Chain of errors. Ground crew made error to flight crew, didn't check to FQIS, broken to aircraft, departed with half fuel. Responsibility. Initially, Bob Pearson and Maurice Quintal blamed. You didn't verify fuel. Your negligence. But then truth understood. System error. Training deficiency. FQIS malfunction. Bob Pearson and Maurice Quintal exonerated. Not just exonerated. Declared heroes. Bob Pearson flew Boeing 767 like glider. Used forward slip technique. Saved 69 lives. Hero pilot. After Gimli glider incident, Air Canada made serious changes. 1. Metric training mandatory. All ground crew and flight crew received metric system training. Conversion calculations standardized. Pound-kilogram-liter confusion prevented. 2. FQIS repair. Faulty fuel gauge systems immediately repaired. Boeing 767 fleet underwent FQIS checks. Manual calculation procedures updated. 3. Pre-flight check update. Pre-flight fuel verification done with double-check system. Captain plus first officer plus ground engineer equals triple approval. 4. Glide training. Emergency glide training started for pilots. What do you do if engines quit? Simulations. Bob Pearson's techniques became lessons. What happened to aircraft? Boeing 767-233, tail number C-GAUN, repaired at Gimli. Nose landing gear replaced. Returned to service. Flew for 25 more years. Retired in 2008. Now parts in museums. Nose cone, Winnipeg Aviation Museum. Cockpit sections. Other museums. Gimli glider equals legend. 43 years passed. 1983 to 2026. Bob Pearson, after Gimli glider, became hero, received aviation awards, retired from Air Canada in 2016. Now 91 years old, if still alive, 2026. Still tells story. That day, my glider training saved our lives. Maurice Quintal, first officer, showed heroism with Bob Pearson. Retired, living comfortably, 69 passengers. All survived. Some still meet. On anniversaries. Gimli glider reunion. We expected to die, but Bob Pearson saved us. Gimli Airport, still there, used for small aircraft. Runway 32R, no longer racing strip, but event remembered. Plaque there, July 23, 1983. Gimli glider landing site. Aviation lessons. Gimli glider holds special place in aviation history. 1. System errors are cumulative. One error to another error to disaster. But this time, one error to another error to miracle. 2. Pilot skill saves lives. Bob Pearson's glider experience, key factor. Training matters, different skills matter. 3. Stay calm. No panic, systematic thinking, solution-focused. Bob Pearson stayed calm in cockpit. Saved 69 lives. 4. People can survive. Unpowered landing from 41,000 feet. Runway full of people. Nose gear collapsed. Nobody died. Human resilience, skill, luck. Gimli glider equals miracle. 43 years later, people still tell story. They ran out of fuel at 41,000 feet, and everyone survived. One of aviation's most positive stories. Not disaster, victory, not death, life. July 23, 1983. Air Canada Flight 143, Montreal to Edmonton. 69 passengers. Boeing 767-200. Fuel calculation error. Metric confusion. Engines quit at 41,000 feet. Captain Bob Pearson, glider pilot, calm, skilled, forward slip, glide techniques, manual control, Gimli Airport, former military base, drag racing event, people on runway, cars, families, Boeing 767 approaching, silent, unpowered, landing, dead stick landing, nose gear collapsed, sliding on runway, sparks, stopped, evacuation, 69 passengers, crew, all alive, deaths, 0, serious injuries, 0, miracle, 43 years later, still remembered. Gimli glider, fuel ran out, but hope didn't. Engines stopped, but hearts kept beating, glided from 41,000 feet, and everyone went home. Bob Pearson, Maurice Quintal, 69 passengers, heroes, survivors, Gimli glider, aviation miracle, never forgotten.